Hey guys, how you doing? Happy Homebrew Wednesday for this week. I'm sorry I missed you last week. I needed to take a break from online stuff for a little bit, just to recharge my batteries. But here we are back, so thanks for your patience. Got myself a nice Canadian blonde homebrew with a lime in it. Summer's coming to a close, if it hasn't already, so this will be the last of this for a little while. Cheers. Oh man, maybe it won't be the last of it for a little while. I like it. I'm not really big on seasonal beers. I'll drink anything, anytime, pretty much. I'll drink a stout in the summer and a blonde in the winter. You know, there's not much head retention there because of the lime I put in. It just screws up the head, but believe me, it's darn carbonated and darn good. Actually, also the lime takes away the clarity. It was actually clearer than this before I added the lime juice to it. So cheers. Oh no, I am not half in the bag this week like I was the other week. That's my second beer, so everything should be fine. So, I have a few things I want to talk to you about this week. Just some updates. I've got a Brewer's Best kit brewing back there, another one that was a gift, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. I think it's an American Pale Ale. I think that's what it is. And I'll give you a little review on that when it's ready. I didn't film it. I wanted to just brew something, off camera for once. And talk a little bit about the last beer that I brewed, which unfortunately, because I didn't do a video last week, you never got to see me talk about it and give it a taste. But I will talk about it. It's the beer that I brewed on top of the existing yeast cake. Okay, so it's that whole subject that we've been harping on for the last few weeks. So we'll start with that. Did it work? Absolutely. I don't know whether I already told you this, but yes, it did. It tasted wonderful. It was just a Cooper's IPA, but there was a little bit of the hop flavors from the previous beer. And some of the spices that were put in there that were sort of residual in the yeast cake, or the trube, or whatever you want to call it. So, I've proven to myself that I can do that. So anybody out there, and I know there are people, I'm not making this up, that say it's the worst thing you could ever do. Either they haven't tried it, or they did something wrong, or I don't know, something went wrong, but it does work. It's a great way to reuse yeast, and it's easy, because you know what? You don't even have to sanitize the fermenter. You just siphon out your beer, the existing beer, and put the new batch right in there. You don't have to sanitize nothing. You don't have to clean nothing. It's great. I do that with my kegs too. I will use a keg 3 times without actually cleaning it out. Unless it's been sitting for a while, then I will clean it out. But if it's just emptied, I'll just dump it in the sink and put new beer on top. Providing the beers are sort of the same kind of beer. I wouldn't want to put a light beer like this one here I've got into a keg that had a stout in it. Then you're going to want to clean it out. Same with the fermenter. Same idea. Okay? And so, but anyways, it did work. And, you've got to be really careful when it comes to the internet and all this stuff that goes around. Like, I call it brew lore. But there's, almost every hobby in the world has, these side bands that are kind of off the beaten path. And people say, yes, you absolutely can. And others are like, no, you absolutely can't. And when that's the case, you kind of have to just try it yourself. That's all. And that's what I did. So I know some of you already do it, pitch on top of existing yeast beds. And I know people that have posted in forums that say, no way, it's impossible. You should never do it. It's bad. Well, I don't know whether they just have never tried it, or they're just repeating or regurgitating something they read, or they have tried it and something went dreadfully wrong, which can happen. but mine worked out great. So I apologize for not having any here to taste. I'm trying not to buy store-bought beer. It's so expensive, and I probably could have shot some video, I guess, self-tasting it, but it wasn't a big deal. It just worked. It was just a Cooper's IPA, and it worked out great. So there you go. What else? We were talking a few weeks ago about the blood red beer, where you take, I was taking Clamato juice and putting a bit of Clamato juice in the bottom of a glass and then topping it up with beer. Was loving it. Tasted great. Some people are afraid of Clamato juice because they think it's going to taste like clams, which it doesn't, but that's fine. I thought maybe I would take the suggestion of a couple of people who said, just use V8 juice, like a vegetable cocktail juice. And so I did. I tried that, and it was delicious. It really worked out great. So if you really do want to try that style of beer, and you're afraid of Clamato juice, or you can't get it where you live, which is always a lot of times the case, then just take your glass. This is the wrong style of glass for this beer, I know. Just take your glass, fill it up about a quarter, maybe a third of the way with the V8 juice, top it up with your beer, and give it a try. See what you think. I really, really enjoy it. I don't have any more V8 juice, otherwise I would have maybe made one with this, but I just stuck with the lime for now. So, that's a nice beer, too. I have received a couple of beers on my front doorstep. A fellow whose first name is Jay, his handle in the 17 Brew Crew forum is MCMLXX. I hope I got that right. I'm sure I did. He dropped 2 beers off. One of them he told me not to open until late October. So, okay. It's bottle conditioning. It's actually getting fairly clear. Still a little hazy down there, but in the neck it's getting clear. But yeah, it's still bottle conditioning. So I will leave this for about a month. It's a concoction that he made up. I've got he sent me some notes here. As to what went into it and how it went and stuff. So we'll probably, it says it's a Belgian style IPA. So I'll be leaving that to bottle condition for another while. The second one he brought me, I will actually be doing a Craig's homebrew review on this one. Why is my camera going light and dark like that? It's bizarre. Anyway, this is a, what's it called again? Duron's Hand. There's actually a story behind this beer. First of all, the beer was crafted by 2 people. It's a homebrew. 2 people from opposite ends of the planet. One is in Australia. His name on 17 Brew Crew is Coron Zenith. We actually pronounce Zenith here in America. It's actually in electronics. They make televisions or stereos and things, or they used to. Coron Zenith or Coron Zenith, whichever way he wants it pronounced. Him and Jay, MCMLXX, got together online and made up this beer. Crafted the recipe, and it's got information on the back. And there's a bit of a urban myth, I guess, if you will, or whatever, behind this beer. So this will be a Craig's beer review or homebrew review very soon. I get a lot of questions regarding somebody put their beer down, they made a batch, they pitched their yeast, everything was done by the book, and 24 hours later, nothing's happening. And so I get a message on 17 Brew Crew forum or somewhere, and they're panicking. And of course, a lot of times by the time I get the message, it's 4 days, 5 days, even a week later. So I don't, by then they have their answer. This happened to me actually recently, and it was a mystery to me. I don't know what happened. Everything was done properly. I pitched my yeast. It was a brewer's best beer kit. And the yeast was, it came with was a Ale 97? Something like that. It was the Dunstar yeasts come in a vacuum sealed sachet. It was a dry yeast. And they're hard. You tap on them, they're vacuum sealed, so you can't bend them. They're you know. And this one was perfectly vacuum sealed. There was nothing wrong with it. The best before date was like next year sometime. And I brewed the beer, and I rehydrated the yeast. And when I rehydrated it, which you do by, you boil half a cup of water, cover it with saran wrap, you let it cool down to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you sprinkle the yeast on. And you cover it back up with saran wrap, you leave it for 15, 20 minutes. Then you uncover it, and you take a sanitized fork or something, and you just give it a little stir. And what you should see, and this is a good reason why you should rehydrate your yeast, right? What you should see is a nice creamy looking slurry. And even with a little bit of foam on top, maybe. A little bit of action there. It should look alive. Well, this particular yeast didn't look alive. It looked completely inactive. There was no action. Basically, it sunk to the bottom. And so I stirred it 20 minutes later, thinking I was going to get, and it just sunk to the bottom. So it really didn't look good to me. But I thought to myself, well, I've never used this Ale 97 or whatever it was. Maybe it's just that type of yeast it is. So I pitched it onto the wort, and 24 hours later, I noticed that my airlock wasn't moving, but that's not the only thing that you should rely on. It's the first thing you should rely on, just as a sort of a tally light, if you will. Like, I know my airlock is good. I know my seal is good. Why isn't it doing anything? So then, all of a sudden I feel like I've got a sneeze coming on. So then I took the lid off the fermenter and I looked in there. Absolutely nothing. The beer, or the wort, had no foam on top. Nothing. No bubbles, no foam. And there was no ring around the inside of the fermenter. That's kind of when you know something's wrong. And we're talking 24 hours after pitching the yeast. So we're getting in a little bit of a danger zone here. Risking possible infection. So the first thing I did was I stirred it, put the lid back on, and waited about 5 to 6 hours. Still nothing. At this point, I decided it was time to pitch another sachet of yeast. Now, I didn't have a Dunstar Ale 97 or 97 Ale or whatever it was called, so I just pitched a Saf Ale US-05. Good generic yeast, works for almost everything. And I did rehydrate this as well. And when I rehydrated it, you could tell that this yeast was good. And it was past its best before date by a couple of months, which isn't a big deal because it was in the fridge. After 20 minutes, you're stirring it with a fork. It looks creamy, milky, kind of like tea. With, you put milk in your tea, and it looked like tea with milk in it. So that's when I knew, this yeast is alive and it's ready to go. So I pitched it, and within a few hours, that sucker was going. Yeah, you could tell. So the moral of the story is, number one, rehydrating your yeast can tell a story about the yeast. It can warn you that, this yeast doesn't seem like it's, like it's looking very good. Maybe I'll do a video on rehydrating yeast. I've got so many packages of yeast in the fridge that it wouldn't hurt me to just waste one, or wait till I'm doing a batch of beer and just do that part of it on camera. So that's number one. Number two, check your fermentation. Look for signs of inactivity. Airlock. Look at the beer itself. If you suspect it's not fermenting, don't leave the lid off for too long. Get yourself another package of yeast, rehydrate it, check it to make sure it looks good. pitch that in there, and you'll be fine. And it did. It went off. It started fermenting. It smelt wonderful. There was no off smells. No funny, signs that it was infected or anything like that. So I was lucky. But, after 24 hours, you really should start checking to see if something is happening. Even if it's not the airlock, something should be going on in there. And don't just put that lid on there and just leave it and come back in a week, because you'll never, you just never know. Now, I don't blame the yeast company. I don't blame the beer kit company, Brewer's Best. I don't blame anybody. This can happen. Something happened that day when they were making their packages of yeast, and there was a bunch of them that were bad, or maybe somebody stored it incorrectly. I don't know. It can happen. It's nobody's fault. And just make sure you check your brew. Keep an eye on it. If it goes longer than 24 hours with nothing, then you need to do something. You need to act. Okay? Stirring it is the first thing you should do. Just to see if you can't just wake it up, Just give it a, If that doesn't do anything, pitch another sachet. Even if the first yeast was just kind of slow and it took a while to get going, you're better off playing it safe. Better to be safe than sorry. Pitch that second sachet of yeast, and just don't worry about it. If it's, because if that first sachet is slow to start, it might mean that it has a low cell count. And if so, then adding a second sachet of it is going to be a good idea. Okay? So that's just something for you to think about if you're new to brewing, which some of you are. You got to have your, you got to have your tool belt ready. You got to pull out your, to know what to do if something seems like it's wrong. And that's one of the things that you should have a handle on is, how should this stuff look? If it looks dead to you, it might just be. So there you go. That's that topic. I know that looks kind of dead too, but that's just because of the lime. It's actually quite refreshing. And if you have to go out because you ran out of home brew, or you're a dummy and didn't brew enough beer, if you have to go out and buy, a brand of beer that's kind of doesn't, it's just a cheap beer that's, we call it piss water in the brewing community. Get yourself some limes and just put that in, and it really does spunk it up. Or better yet, get the V8 juice out and doctor it up with that. You really will be pleased with that if you like that kind of thing. It's great that people come together from all around the world and they brew beer. And they're not trying to outdo each other. Home brewers in general are really usually not that competitive. Some people get a little bit, let's just say proud of their equipment, their setup. Okay, that's fine. If that's the part of it that they enjoy, as long as they're not being snotty about it, that's fine. So, but for the most part, home brewers are basically not competitive. They're helpful to each other. And even when they go into these, these competitions, or they're trying to win, medals and stuff like that, I think a lot of it's just in fun. Sure, they'd like to win. They'd like to go home knowing that their beer won something, it placed in a contest. That's a good thing. Did I just quote Martha Stewart? Oh, God. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Thanks for watching. Down below, okay? Put your opinions down there, If you think I'm a brew snob, let me know. I'll change it if I can. But I don't think I am. I think I'm just a guy who enjoys his beer, likes making beer, and likes sharing his insights with you guys. And if it weren't for you guys, this would be no fun. This video stuff would be absolutely no fun. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with me and for watching. Thank you for participating down below. And spread the word and keep on brewing. 17.